We will continue to refer back to the discussion of the problem of evil and suffering, and we are preparing to move on to the discussion of the nature of God. But first, it is important to address the idea of our combined spiritual and physical existence. You know, it is tempting to think that God may have unfairly stuck us into the situation we currently find ourselves in, the human experience, and I would like to address that. In his book, The Suffering God, Old Testament scholar Terence Fretheim wrote that the spiritual and the material are not mutually exclusive categories. In other words, just because someone or something is spiritual does not mean that they cannot have a physical or material existence as well. The French philosopher and Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin famously stated that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. I agree. We are first and primarily spiritual beings. Our spirits now reside within physical and mortal bodies. When the mortal body dies, the spirit continues to exist. Concerning man's spiritual being, God is called the God of our spirits. Moses calls God the God of the spirits of all mankind. This wording in the Old Testament is interesting. It specifically says the God of our spirits, not just the God of mankind. We have physical being and spiritual being. We have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits? The spirit was given to the physical body by God. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Now in the Ecclesiastes verse, return to the God who gave it. This word translated to gave means to put, set, deliver, or make. And make not as in create, but make as in to appoint to a position. So the Spirit was already there, and it was placed and appointed into a position within the physical realm. In the ex materia theology I have described, our essence always existed in some form, and God then created each individual spiritually first, and then placed the Spirit into a position whereby it could enter mortality. Does that mean that we were with God before our mortal lives began? Consider the Genesis creation story, where we learn of Adam and Eve, who were immortal but ignorant and flawed beings, who existed in the presence of God. God explained their situation and options. Understanding the consequences of the decision, man and woman chose to obtain the knowledge of good and evil, but at the cost of being removed from God's presence and having to endure suffering and death. They chose a mortal and human experience. Why a tangible, physical, material world and body? I think that we should conclude that the combination of a spirit and physical body is ideal in God's design for us. And here's my reasoning. God could have created us as only spirit, or allowed us to remain as beings which exist as spirit only. God, of course, would have this option. If it is better for us to remain outside of a physical realm as spirits only, then God could have allowed us to remain in that spiritual state. But God didn't. And we must assume that a benevolent God is doing this for our benefit. Indeed, God saw everything that He had made, and behold, it was very good. The spiritual and physical existence united together is not meant or designed to be temporary. And the whole ideal is lost by means of death entering the world. This is extremely important. In the Judeo-Christian tradition and text, this combination of spirit and flesh will be permanent by means of the resurrection. Not only that, but if we are believing in an omnipotent and omniscient God, then we should conclude that the best possible world, or the best possible existence, is the combined spiritual and physical immortal existence that God has worked so hard to achieve for us. Being just a spirit perhaps should be considered as inferior to what God has planned for us. Allow me to include a couple of brief slides on some of the errors of Gnosticism, because it provides a useful contrast compared to what the Scriptures actually describe. The early Gnostics believed that a lesser god, Demiurge, created our physical reality in an unfortunate act of ignorance. Creation of the tangible world was a mistake. The material reality is inherently evil, according to some Gnostics, or at least it's far removed from God. Gnostics teach an absolute transcendence of God, and transcendence in the sense that God is inaccessible from the material existence and very far removed from it. God's nature is distant from the corrupted material world, and, for example, the man Jesus could not be fully divine simply because the fullness of deity cannot be found within a physical body. Unfortunately, some forms of these Gnostic ideas still permeate modern theologies to this day, and I will go further into this topic in the future in order to illustrate that. According to Gnosis.org, Gnosticism incorporates a kind of pantheism whereby God is everything, but tries to incorporate monotheism, theism, deism, and polytheism altogether. There's an absolutely transcendent God, this true God, which did not fashion or create anything. He, or it, emanated or brought forth from within himself the substance of all there is in all the worlds, visible and invisible. And referring to the lesser demiurge God, Gnosticism says that the blame for the world's failings lies not with humans, but with the Creator. So, from a Gnostic view, as the true God emanated from itself, far away from that, a more corrupted and physical existence took place through a flawed secondary creator. For Gnostics, this is what explains the existence of evil. The problem with that is that evil still originates from the divine. As for something emanating from or being created by God, you can view it in two different ways. Anything emanating from God or anything created by God results in existence becoming less divine, or anything God does or creates results in bringing existence closer to deity, which is a never-ending task if existence is infinite. The view I espouse is the latter. God would not emanate or do things in order to bring about genuine evil or even skew existence negatively. God would not even skew a single individual towards damnation, not even for a supposed greater good. God desires all people to be saved. In terms of the possible modes of creation, previously quoted were three options given by prominent Christian theologians. Ex Deo, creation from God itself, which Gnosticism embraces in a roundabout way. Ex Materia, an ancient view which was replaced by the Greek philosophy of ex nihilo, and ex nihilo, creation from nothing, which most of the Judeo-Christian theology now embraces, and in a certain sense is also creation ex Deo, as anything God created originated in God's own creative imagination, which is also from God. Please note that we could theorize a possible combination of two of these, and I will do that in the next presentation.